Quinn Mills is a professor of business administration at Harvard University. He also acts as a consultant, especially on labor relations, to various corporations, and he'll be giving us management's perspective. Professor Mills, thanks for letting us visit with you today.
Glad to have you, Alex.
We just spoke with Vicky Saporta of the Teamsters, who told us, from labor's point of view, why people join unions. Now, as someone who has worked with the top management of many different companies, how would you answer that question?
Well, I think unions suggest to people that if they join the unions can get them better wages and working conditions and those kind of things. But when it comes down to why people vote to join a union, when ordinarily the management is opposed to it, I think the reason is because management supervisors aren't doing their job well. They're not being responsive to the people. They're not paying attention to their needs, so that people vote to join a union because they want someone to deal with management on their behalf. It's really a management failure.
Now let me clarify this. You're saying that when management doesn't pay attention and respond to people's needs, that's when a union is voted in. Well, what actually happens to the work environment when a business becomes unionized?
Well, when a union comes into a company, a contract has to be negotiated. The company and the union have to make a set of rules. They have to agree on a set of rules by which they will each conduct themselves. They have to establish wage levels and working conditions and benefits and all of those things. And that takes a while. And that's a process that's very disruptive. People don't know what the outcomes will be. The union is worried about what the results will be, and the company is worried as well. The employee is kind of in the middle. The union represents the employee, but the employee has a foot in both camps, if you will. And that's a long process, and it's a disruptive process. Once a contract is reached, then the rules spell out what the union's responsibilities are and the company's. One of the very important things that happens is that everything is now much more formal. If an employee wants to know whether he or she can do something, there is a rule book. There is a union contract to be consulted. And if the company doesn't obey that contract to the letter, the union has a grievance procedure by which they bring up the issue and raise it with the company. And if the company is violating that agreement and doesn't recognize it, then the union takes the company into a procedure where an arbitrator tells the company it has to do that. So it's a much more formal process. And a lot of the one-to-one relationships and the informality of the system is lost.
All right, in this new, as you say, formal relationship, what happens to the rights of workers and management?
Lawyers on both sides, for the union and the employer, tend to make the rules which the employee and the supervisors will have to live by. If you think a bit further about it, when it comes to a grievance, the individual worker can register a complaint with the union, and the union then thinks about and decides whether or not to take it to the company. If the union decides not to take it to the company, then the employee's complaint generally doesn't go anywhere. And if the union should decide that it's not all that important a complaint and they raise it with the company but don't pursue it very vigorously, the employee again doesn't have any other recourse for the most part. Furthermore, and finally, there's a lot of red tape associated with this process, so that an employee has rights and the union represents him, but it's a slow and legal and laborious process that may take months and months before an employee's complaint gets a fair hearing. So the employee has rights, and I think the union probably does its best to support those rights. But it's a slow, long process, and it's not a very flexible or a quick process.
Vicky Saporta described several options labor has in dealing with management. What sort of tools or strategies does management have in dealing with labor?
Well, management has a number of tools in dealing with a union. One of them, of course, is the right not to sign a contract. Another one is the right to insist on what management thinks are reasonable and fair provisions in those contracts. Company does not have to agree to whatever a union suggests or demands. If a union strikes, a company has the right to hire replacements for the strikers. People who strike gamble with their jobs. If the company can replace them, it often will. I think the company also has the opportunity to lock employees out who strike. We don't like to talk about that, but if the union strikes for things the company can't afford, the company, or if the union doesn't strike but demands things that the company can't afford, the company can close the plant and tell the employees not to come to work. So there are a lot of tools that the company has. Those aren't the best way to deal with unions or with labor relations, however. The best way is to have a strategy to be fair with the union and yet firm about the management's rights and prerogatives, and to hope that the union and the employees will be sensible and that lockouts and strikes and replacements simply don't occur.
Well, speaking for management, how do you see labor management relations changing, evolving?
Well, I hope they're going to be getting better. It's a very competitive economy now. We have competition from abroad, and we have competition from non-union companies in the United States. Our labor costs are high. The people who work for us want a better standard of living, but it's very hard for us to get business in a market that's this competitive. So we hope that the union is going to work with the company to try to keep us competitive in the marketplace so that we can provide jobs and decent wage rates and benefits for our employees.
Well, then, based on what you just said, what are the chances for labor and management growing into a partnership with each other? What would they have to do to achieve that?
Well, there's considerable potential for a partnership to evolve between the union and the company. But it requires the union to recognize some things that the union is often unwilling to recognize. The first one is that we have to have productivity. We have to have an efficient operation. And the union has got to agree to work rules and conditions that let us be cost-effective in the marketplace. Otherwise, we can't get the business, we can't provide the jobs, and we can't provide good wages and benefits. Productivity is very important to us, and having flexibility and adaptability in the way we organize and run our production shops is extremely important to us. The unions too often do not recognize that. They put high cost and inflexible rules in our way, and we simply can't compete in the marketplace. Second thing is we're very anxious that they be supportive of our company and allow the employees to feel that they're a part of the company, to be loyal to it, to feel that supervisors and managers care about them as well, so that the employee can make a commitment to his or her work and do a good job for us. Do a job that's competitive, that has high quality, and will help the company survive. So we need productivity, and we need the commitment of the employees and the unions to make us successful. Now, on our side, on management side, we have a responsibility to obey the union contract, to conduct ourselves in accordance with the provisions of that contract. We have a responsibility to take the concerns of our employees seriously and to respond to them when they're legitimate, and to not substitute our own views for those of the employees. And we will try to train our managers and supervisors to do that. So if we're fair with the employees, and if the union's prepared to let us have a productive and efficient workplace, then there's a basis for a partnership. Otherwise, there's only a basis for disagreement and arguments and difficulties.
All right, all right. We have one more stop on our schedule, but before we leave, Dr. Mills, I want to thank you for letting us visit.
Well, thank you, Alex. It's been nice to have you here.
That's